I'm curious, as somebody who handles promotion and media relations for Nefarious Industries and other experimental labels or experimental artists, who is the audience for this? How would you characterize the average noise or experimental music fan?
I don't like to categorize anybody because I think that most people, even if they think that they're the programmed folks who want to hear the big top hits and and want to hear the big metal bands and maybe they only listen to Slipknot or whatever's big. Like I'm just throwing nothing against whoever. I'm just throwing names out. I think somewhere inside everybody, if you're actually into music for what music is, I think everybody has this curious nature in them because very rarely do people get consumed or fully engulfed by music and then stop there and only listen to that artist or that style or anything like that. Like everybody finds new things to hear. You know what I mean? Like everybody, like almost nobody's record collection or what's on their current playing list is, that's not the same in 5 months or 5 years or whatever. I'm not saying nobody. Of course, there's people out there like that, but I think most people, even if they don't know they have that explored, that curiosity, I think it's in there. So, of course, there's people that are elitist, that think that their scene is exactly how it's, they want a certain kind of person to come to their show, but then they complain when only, X amount of people pay at the door. You know what I mean? There's like a contradictory element to that whole limited sort of thinking. So I don't prejudge or categorize or classify who's listening to what. I think just saying with, now, if you listen to something like, if you follow a label like, I don't know, who's some like Phage Tapes and Cloister Recordings and some of the very, more noisier, whatever sort of things, you might be you can kind of not judge the audience, but you kind of know who's listening to that stuff based on what the label is releasing. Like Phage Tapes is very solid with all their, with some of the harshest noise ever. Like, I'm not going to go, hey, I want to go explore this label to try to find some post-avant Afrobeat jazz world music conglomerate. It's like, no, you're going to hear harsh noise. You're going to hear purely disgusting, exactly. And some of the best of the genre, some of the best of the stuff that's out there is right there. But you're not going to, go try to find a noisier, like progressive metal cinematic album there. You know what I mean? Nefarious Industries does that. You know what I mean? Where defining an audience for Nefarious Industries is nearly impossible. Because like I said, within 1 month, you could have S.C.R.A.M or Titan Atakians and Psychosomatic coming out with L Drugstore and Gridfailure and Walking Bombs and Those Darn Gnomes. It's all over the place. Some of these bands, you can mention 15 genre classifications trying to describe one band's sound. So when you line 4 of those artists coming out in 1 month together, you're covering the whole gamut of anything that's besides popular, makes a lot of money, everybody loves it. Like that's what you can rule out. Outside of that, it's up to everybody's judgment. You know what I mean? I don't like to judge people, and like even people that are kind of set in their ways or whatever. I always think you can convert them, open up their mind, get them to listen to something else, get them to appreciate or like something new.
Sure. I mean, everyone is potentially a fan of this music.
Or of any genre, trying to sell people death metal. I mean, it's the same thing. It's literally the same thing. You never listen to it? Well, why not? That's the first question. It's like, well, death metal killed my brother. Well, okay, never mind. Let's listen to something else. I get it. Like if you have that, then you have an excuse. But outside of that, like, well, I don't know. Well, that's not an excuse. We're gonna listen to death metal. We're gonna listen to noise.
Well, especially in the current media environment where everything is on Spotify or YouTube or whatever. And so the idea of underground doesn't really exist anymore. because we're right there next to Taylor Swift and Demi Lovato. And if people choose one over the other, it's not because we're underground. If we're on the biggest platform in the world that's on everyone's smartphones, we're just unpopular. People just don't like us.
Correct. Yep. That's a very good point. It's not an underground is a construct of the mind at this point. It's like part of the matrix. Like it really is. It's not tape trading and fanzines and that kind of thing anymore. It's definitely not. The accessibility's there. However, I think underground now is a mindset. It's like, hey, I don't want to, like, sure, you can turn on any popular channel and hear, I see some of these radio show reportings and stuff like that. And like some of these major channels, they're playing like 90% of the same music for a 3-hour block, like almost every week. Like there's a new single, there's a new song, there's a new thing incorporated, but they're still playing the same single, the same song, whatever. And it's like, I thought that format was dead, but this is still what's popular. So it's kind of the same thing. It's like, sure, I could open up a diner on Route 80 and I could put up a billboard out there, come eat it at Dave's little ass diner coming right up on the next exit. But there's still 45 McDonald's billboards around my billboard. So 90% of the people, 99% of the people are still going to go to McDonald's, like not Dave's little diner. It's like you got to be those few people that would drive over and eat at my cauldron. Like those are the people that they're looking for something else. You know what I mean? They want to hear something different, like anybody. You can go, once you've heard a song, once you've heard an artist, whatever, you know where to go find them and get them. You know what I mean? It's like, I can sit here and rattle off 25 bands right now that I just heard this year that I want to go listen to more. I can rattle off 25 bands that are my favorite bands from high school in the 90s and shit that I still want to hear every single day. And then I can not listen to any of those, like, and just go, well, I like this band. Let me go to, like, I don't know, Last FM. And who do they compare Masana to? Who do they, Muslim Gauze also, okay, fine, I'm gonna check these guys out, check that band out. Like there's just so many ways that you can find this stuff anymore. It's right there. It's just a matter of digging past what's thrown in your face, what's being advertised. But you're exactly correct. I mean, there's no underground. Like Gridfailure in particular, I only have, I'm not even going to say a real number here, but I probably only have 8 or 10 or maybe a dozen records of mine that are on all digital channels. 99, there's like a huge percentage of my stuff that's only on Bandcamp, and that's just because I've been self-releasing it. And I could finish a record, within an hour of us finishing our conversation and have it on Bandcamp by midnight. You know what I mean? Like it's that easy to do. It's just that perfect. Bandcamp is just the greatest thing to ever exist. Like I could release a record before midnight just because. Eventually I'll go back through and re-solicit and put everything back in. I'll probably remaster records or master them for the first time or whatever and re-release everything in a new format or something like that, but still always keep the originals on Bandcamp. You know what I mean? Like just to get to those audiences and all that. But I personally like Spotify. Sure. If people want to listen to shit on Spotify, that's great. Good for them. But, I do come from a scene of morals. And, I don't see the guy that created Spotify as any kind of music guru. He wasn't in bands. He doesn't appreciate artists. He pays them less than Amazon for their plays. Like, I don't know why people like Spotify. I can't stand it. I only signed up for Spotify just because my nephew started making really killer electronic music and released a single on Spotify. So I had to go, I signed up for an account just to go listen to it or whatever. And I listened to Spotify probably twice since then. And I don't know. I personally don't give a shit about it. I think everybody's too consumed with plays and playlists and everything. And I don't want to hear a single. I don't want to hear 55 singles in a row. Like I want to go, oh, that song was cool. I want to hear that whole record. I want to hear somebody's entire record. And if I like it by the second or third song, like I'm going to buy it. And it's just that easy. I don't like, singles and that. aspect. You get all of our press release, everything. We're always doing track premieres and everything. And obviously, it's a way of building up and hyping to a record and getting it out to the public. But I don't want to hear that one song. I want to hear the whole record. Like, obviously, it's a way of trickling people in and making them come check out the record when it is available. But if you're hearing a song on the radio and the record's already out, like, I'd rather just go listen to that band's entire record right there and make a judgment on that record and maybe have a new band that I follow and want to buy their entire catalog. I think that if you like something, you should be dedicated to it. And you should support those artists as much as possible.
Part of my curiosity about the audience is because, as we discussed a little bit, experimental music isn't something that I cover in a serious way, but it is something that I do intend to have more and more on the blog and the podcast. And I assume my audience are people who are a lot like me, who, started in metal in one form or another, but are curious about a lot of other things and probably shy away from things that are extremely popular or trendy or saturated at the moment and want to find something else, want to keep searching for other things.
Yeah.
And so I'm just curious about who if we're saying that like 99% of people go to McDonald's, who is the 1% who's actually searching out, noise and experimental music? I assume that a lot of them are people like me who, discovered noise and drone and ambient through like Brutal Truth or Godflesh or things like that.
Right.
But, it also... It springs out of the avant-garde jazz scene and experimental classical composers and, artistic movements that did sound experiments and collage and things like that.
Right.
And so it potentially has a wider reach than any subculture like punk or metal who appeal to a very specific character type, I would say.
Yeah, to a point. To a point. But like before that person was into punk, they were probably into rock or maybe metal or something else. You know what I mean? It's like, it depends. Was that person, are they only into punk because they had an older brother who was a punk for 10 years of the kid's upbringing? Or did you come across that genre on your own? You know what I mean? Like, I've kind of always had friends or someone that would hit me onto something, whatever, but I like to think that I made my own musical explorations kind of on my own. You know what I mean? It's like, I think that's the answer you're looking for. Like, people have to be willing to, you can go out as an explorer and like, as soon as you hit a new area, you just throw up your flag and, name it after yourself and you're done. Or you can just be like, cool, mark it, and then go get in your boat and go look for the next unexplored island or whatever. You know what I mean? It's like, there's no reason to set up camp. Like, once you found punk, it's like, oh, okay, well, I'm into punk. But these guys have these crazy voice bands.
Some people do, though.
Yeah, exactly. Some people do. And then some people are, by the time they hit their 30s or 40s or whatever, they're not even into music. They just listen to whatever they were bred on, or their top artists, or they're back to just listening to the radio and stuff. There's so many people that get fully head over heels for like extreme metal and shit for like 3 years, and then they're gone. And it's like, that's why I think people who spend their life doing this, I mean, again, you keep kind of throwing yourself under the bus that you don't cover a ton of experimental music. You obviously know about it. You obviously have done a lot of thought, of exploration and thinking about it. And that's what's cool about your podcast in general, is that you're very inquisitive about the people that you're talking to. You're not just like, here's a structured set of questions. You actually clinically kind of run people through the thought process, whatever you're, you know what I mean? You want to get to the actual theory or the point or where their head is in it. And you're actually asking things, you ask very interesting questions. You know what I mean? You try to get to the root of all these things and the origin of all these things. And that's what makes it super cool. It's like, you could easily have any number of experimental artists on your show. And I don't think they'd even have to be necessarily heavy or related to metal. You know what I mean? It's already a very organic site, and your output is very solid. So, you know what I mean? I don't think, obviously you don't have, 1,000, you have a lot more death and grind bands and everything else and everything else, but that is the majority of what's out there too. You know what I mean? There's plenty of noise and plenty of harsh and experimental, whatever, but it's not the majority of what's out there being dished by publicists and labels. It's still a minority somewhere. you've got to be interested, and that's it. Once you have the interest, you're like, then there's like this entire the underground does still exist. You could be a experimental or noise artist, or whatever, and put out 15 tapes, and they sell to a very specific audience, and that's it. Like, you're not trying to get Spotify plays. You're not even on Spotify. So it does still exist. It's just it's a bit different than it was in the 90s. Obviously with technology, but that's how our entire lives have changed. You can lock your door from around the planet, ring and whatever. So that's not really something that changed within music or the underground. Versus the underground didn't disappear because of Spotify necessarily. It's you know what I mean. It's just technology in general. Most of your local newspapers have dried up, and now everybody's on Facebook, and it's an awful thing. You still have all the access to any news. You can also go read BBC or news in India or anywhere. You're not stuck to one local paper. So it's like anything else. It's how you use it that makes it dangerous or an impeding factor or freedom.
I mean, my feeling about how the underground has changed is, or the concept of the underground has changed, is there used to be gatekeepers. There used to be radio stations who were tied to major labels, who were tied to MTV. All these companies had their hands in each other's pockets, and
advertising campaigns.
Yeah.
Yep.
And so they controlled what became popular and what you were actually able to hear, if that was your only access to music and media. And now anybody can type in the word death metal into a search bar and listen to the entire Cannibal Corpse discography or the entire Deicide discography. So the gatekeepers have been removed, but people are not. I mean, maybe, I don't know, maybe you know more about this than I do since you're working with Nuclear Blast and all these bigger bands. But are there more people listening to these bands now than there were 20 years ago? Because I feel metal has a sort of cultural cachet and cool element that it didn't have when I was in high school. But I don't know if people are necessarily more familiar with the music than they were back then. It's just they hear, the term death metal on TV shows more often.
The accessibility, the access is definitely there. Yeah, the access is definitely there, like you said. It's at your fingertips. But if it's not being, maybe the gatekeepers that you're talking about aren't quite in place, but still, obviously a Mastodon record is going to get a lot of attention and a lot of advertising, and a lot of pages of magazines are going to have that cover art, and a lot of, you know what I mean? Radio stations are going to be pumping that single and ignoring 50 others that came out that day, or records that are coming out because they have that single. That mentality still exists in the media, because Sirius FM, Sirius XM, whatever, is not going to make any money by getting the two plays of something that's completely off the grid, that is not going to draw the general listener back. You know what I mean? It's still somewhat structured. Metal is it's like an industry now. It's not it always made money for the right promoters or the right tour manager or the right record label or whatever in some way, in the 90s or whatever. But now it could be just as commercial. I mean, you couldn't tell me in 1993 or whatever that something like Slipknot was going to exist and be, something that sold out across 99 parking lots, 500 shows in a row or something. I'd be like, you're out of your fucking mind. You know what I mean? You never would have thought. But now it's like they're their own institution. You know what I mean? It's a completely different realm in that aspect. So just the fact that, I could have a Gridfailure track up on Spotify and so can Slipknot doesn't put us on the same playing field. You know what I mean? It's just that doesn't even exist. You're still fighting against the most popular stuff on the planet and the stuff with the advertising money, everything else to be heard. But to me, it's like I could probably go out and play with a bunch of 3 other people and write a hook-laden post-metal song and go get some radio, whatever. I have no interest in that. I don't care. I just don't care. If Gridfailure ended up on I don't know, I'm dating myself here, Headbangers Ball, whatever, I wouldn't be opposed. I wouldn't be like, no, I'd be like, fuck yeah, that's awesome. But I'm not going for that. You know what I mean? There's people out there that are writing music to get, like, to do it for their living, to, be able to go on tour their entire life. And that's not necessarily a bad thing. If you're being true to yourself and you're writing good music, and you just know how to market yourself and find the right people and play the game right and you're smart, whatever, there's plenty of bands that do that, and they can go out there and play 200 shows a year and feed their family by making the music that they want to make. There's also people that are looking to break, and just that's it. They want to, you know what I mean? Like, it's human. It's all human nature. Anytime something becomes popular, someone else is going to find a way to capitalize on it and market on it. And they don't always have the best interests at heart. You know what I mean? So not every record label is out there actually a Robin Hood, actually delivering these underground bands to mainstream audiences with all the best of intentions. You know what I mean? Like, it's still human nature in every element of this, the creation of the music, the listening to the music, the marketing of the music, every bit of it. So I think you have to just be open-minded and willing to give things a chance. If something goes completely against your morals and you got to cut it loose, then that's what you got to do. But again, it's I don't know. It just comes down to personal choice. Like, I can put on, we obviously, with Ear Split, we're not being fed these artists from somebody above us. We pick and choose every single artist that we want to work with. So while I might be working with a progressive power metal band or something that isn't my specific favorite type of music, that I'm going to be done with work and I'm going to go listen to 7 Halloween records in a row or something, that's just not my listening forte. I also can appreciate a talented artist on a respected label with the prop plan and be like, I know exactly who wants to hear this. You know what I mean? So you can make a judgment call that way. If I just wanted to go out and only work stuff for, my living that I want to listen to at home, I'd be living in a box, dude. Like, I just want to listen to the dirtiest, weirdest, creepiest avant crap ever made. Like, I'm always on a quest to find that stuff. But that's not really, you don't really go get people on the cover of a magazine with that stuff either. You know what I mean? So it's, we found a way to work with both for our living. But yeah, as far as personal output, I don't know. I'm just always going to keep trying to just, I don't know, just explore.